The kettle started to scream just as my own son texted, "You know we're busy, right?" On Mother's Day. Still, I stood there holding the mug he made me in third grade, the crack near the handle finally showing. As the steam curled upward, so did the memory of him asking for just one backup card, just in case. While the whistle wailed, I opened the bank app he didn't think I still checked. The same child I once shielded from storms was siphoning me in secret. That's when I silenced the kettle and severed the last tie he assumed was forever. Before we begin, may I ask, where in this big, beautiful world are you listening from? It's always a quiet honor to know who's sharing this space. Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. Lorraine Whitaker stepped out of the Food Lion, one paper bag in her arms, one more thing on her mind. The wind was picking up, a dry, snapping chill that cut through her cardigan as she crossed the parking lot. October in North Carolina had a way of lying. Bright sun, but air that bit. She loaded the bag into the back seat of her Prius, eggs, cream, 2 cuts of flank steak, and paused as her eyes caught something. Across the lot, a dark blue sedan. Driver inside, just sitting. Not looking at her, but not looking either. The windows were tinted, but she saw the glow of a phone screen light up once, then go dark. A weird feeling tugged at her chest. Not fear exactly, just that subtle, unmistakable wrongness you get when someone's remembering you and you don't know why. Lorraine got in, locked the doors, and drove off. Home was just 7 minutes away, but her hands stayed tight on the wheel. Her cul-de-sac was quiet, almost cartoonishly so. No kids outside, no lawnmowers, just the slow whirl of an early fall afternoon trying not to be noticed. Inside her house, the floors creaked in their usual places. She went straight to the kitchen, set the bag on the counter, and took a long breath. Something felt off. Nothing obvious, just a prickling behind the ears, the feeling of being watched by a memory, maybe. She shook it off, put the groceries away, poured herself coffee, stood by the window. Everything in her life had been too still for too long. 3 years since she'd moved here. 3 years since the trial. 3 years since she stopped being the woman people whispered about in gas stations. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She let it go to voicemail, probably spam. It buzzed again, voicemail this time. She played it on speaker. A man's voice, low, breathy, but somehow familiar. "You can repaint the house, change your name, even cut your hair, but you don't get to outrun what you did." Then, a soft chuckle. And silence. Lorraine stood frozen, the coffee going cold in her hand. She didn't recognize the voice, but she knew the tone. Someone out there hadn't let go. That night, she double-checked every lock. She shut the curtains. She left a light on in every room. And still, she couldn't sleep. She lay awake until 2:37 a.m., when the motion light on the back porch clicked on. She got up quietly, crept to the window. Nothing. No animal. No wind. But on the glass just at the bottom corner, there was a smudge, a fingerprint. She hadn't opened that window in weeks. Lorraine stepped back from the curtain, heartbeat climbing like a ladder with missing rungs. She picked up her phone and did something she hadn't done in almost 4 years. She scrolled down to N, found the name she thought she'd deleted, Norma Callahan. She hit call, 1 ring, 2. Then a voice, raspy and dry. "If you're calling me after midnight, it means the past just came knocking." Lorraine swallowed. "Someone knows." A pause, a drag of a cigarette. "Then I hope you didn't forget how to lie." "I think I forgot how to be scared." Norma chuckled. "No, hun, that's not fear you're feeling. That's the sound of the curtain rising." Act 1. Lorraine woke before the alarm, her eyes already open when the sun pushed through the blinds. She hadn't slept much. Not with the memory of that fingerprint pressed against her thoughts like it had been on the glass. Still, her body knew the rhythm. Coffee first, then emails, then pretending everything was fine. She padded barefoot across the kitchen tiles, poured her cup, and opened her laptop. Routine had become her armor, but the email from First Carolina Bank felt like a pebble tossed through that illusion. Monthly statement. Ready, checking account, ending in 4203. She clicked through. The numbers didn't hit her all at once. They never did. She scanned with a practiced eye, sipping as she skimmed. Then stopped. $129.53. Duke Energy, $87.99. Triangle Waste Services, $43.21. Speedway. Gas, Durham, not her address. Not her charges. Her stomach dipped. She opened the transactions panel and scrolled to the recurring payments section. Autopay. Active payee, Trevor Whitaker. It was still listed after all this time. A 6-year-old promise rang in her ears, brittle as dried leaves. Just for gas in a pinch, I'd never use it for anything big. Apparently, that pinch had become a habit. Lorraine minimized the window and stared out at the backyard. The morning was crisp and falsely peaceful. She hated that it still looked beautiful. The trees wore that smug golden-orange North Carolina glow, like nothing could be wrong in a place this lovely. She turned back to the laptop, then picked up her phone and dialed Norma. "He's still using the account," Lorraine said the second Norma answered. "Say that again." "For utilities. Trash pickup, energy bills, all of it tied to my name." "Still active," Norma swore under her breath. "God, that man could weasel milk from a dry cow. I should have shut it all down after the divorce. I thought I did. I must have missed one of the secondary cards." "No, babe, you didn't miss it. He left it there, like a vein. And he's been bleeding you in micropayments." Lorraine opened her inbox again. She searched Trevor. 3 recent charges from Home Depot, a U-Haul rental in Raleigh, and a wireless router ordered just days ago. All tagged to the backup card she hadn't touched in years. "He's not just using," Lorraine said slowly. "He's setting something up." "Then it's time to slice the cord," Norma said. "Call John, today. You know he'll handle it." Lorraine nodded even though Norma couldn't see her. "Yeah. You okay?" "No," Lorraine said honestly. "But I will be." John Farley picked up on the first ring. His voice was calm, clipped, legal. "Tell me everything." Lorraine laid it out. Auto pays, ghost charges, Trevor's little financial fingerprints still all over her accounts. "I want it shut down. Every connection, every ghost tie." John was silent for a beat, then said, "We'll need to unwind it clean. No alerts, no sudden account closures. If he sees you reacting, he could pivot." "You think he's watching? I think he's always watching, especially if you're just now finding out." Lorraine's fingers drummed the counter. "Let's move everything over," John continued. "New routing, new card numbers, full firewall. I'll authorize a soft trace, just to see what he's been accessing. Then we'll lock it." She closed her eyes for a moment, grounding herself in his voice. Logical, unemotional. The exact opposite of what she felt. "Thank you," she said. "Lorraine." "Yeah? You sure you're ready for this?" "I should have done it years ago." "Most people should have done everything years ago," John said. "That's not the point. You're doing it now." She hung up and sat back. The account was hers again, not in name, in truth. Lorraine didn't dress for war. She wore soft jeans, a sweater with one frayed cuff, and her reading glasses. But when she sat back down at the kitchen table that morning, it wasn't to scroll or distract herself. It was to sever him cleanly. She opened her laptop and logged into the First Carolina account. The security code texted to her phone. Her phone. No shared cloud, no second line, no old passwords he could guess. The screen loaded. Account settings, joint access. Trevor's name was still there. He hadn't logged in for months, but the link was alive. Like a rusted pipe still trickling water long after the faucet had been shut off, she didn't hesitate. Click, remove secondary user. A window popped up. "Are you sure? This change is permanent." She stared at the prompt for a moment, then hit confirm. The page refreshed. The line was gone. She exhaled, slowly, like the tension had been hiding in her ribcage for years. No explosion, no sudden shift. But something in the room felt different, cleaner, like the air had made up its mind to move forward without permission. Her next stop was the old credit card account, the one they'd opened together back when department stores still gave out discounts for couples. She'd forgotten it existed until John's search turned it up. Trevor had never closed his user access. He hadn't made any purchases recently, but the potential was the problem. The door had been left unlocked. She was done leaving doors open. She clicked into account management, scrolled past the old address they once shared, and terminated the card completely. No downgrade, No new limits, just a full stop. Done. By noon, Lorraine had logged into the family phone plan, one of the last threads. For years, it had felt too complicated to pull apart. His contacts, her phone, old billing logins tied to old email addresses. But not anymore. She removed his line. She paused before removing the two old devices from the dashboard. Her son's tablet from college, the backup iPad they'd never quite decommissioned. Then she cleared those too. No more strays, no more ghosts, a clean ledger. She texted John. Lorraine, all done. I'm ready to pay my own way. Just me. His reply was fast. John. Proud of you. Everything on our end is finalized. Firewall's up. The account is yours alone now. She leaned back in her chair and stared out at the bird feeder swaying in the breeze. There were no birds, just the sound of the wind picking up against the gutters. She took a sip of coffee and didn't wince at the bitterness. She liked it black now. After lunch, she pulled out the manila folder from her filing cabinet, personal legal, and opened her will. The last version had been drafted the year after her mother died. Trevor's name had still been in it then. So had their son's school fund, the lake house in Watauga County, and a bullet point list of who got what dishes. She deleted the whole thing. Then she started fresh. Clean font, generic language. No mentions of property or assets she no longer had. Executor, TBD. Beneficiaries, split evenly between the Haven Foundation and two women's shelters she had quietly donated to for years. No heirs named, no complications invited. She saved the file under a new name, Will 2025 v PDF. Then she printed it, signed it, and slid it into the folder behind her birth certificate and divorce decree. She didn't cry, not because it didn't mean anything, because it did. But some griefs weren't loud. They moved in silence, like water changing shape to fit a new container. By mid-afternoon, Lorraine was restless. She hadn't left the house all day. The kitchen had been too quiet for too long. She decided to make a grocery run, not because she needed much, but because normalcy was something she was learning how to claim again. The store was humming when she arrived. Kids whining in carts, someone arguing about coupons. A man in a business shirt talking too loudly into his Bluetooth. She picked up milk, eggs, spinach, and 2 pounds of ground beef. At the register, she chatted lightly with the cashier, complimented her earrings, and handed over her new debit card. The machine beeped, declined. Lorraine frowned. Try again? Another beep. Declined. The cashier gave her a polite, uncertain smile. Maybe try another. Lorraine pulled out her phone, opened her banking app. The account was fine. Funds were there. John had triple-checked it. She refreshed. Then she saw it. A login attempt at 3:52 p.m. from Durham. 2 failed password entries. She knew who it was. Trevor hadn't just noticed. He was trying to claw back in. Lorraine returned the card to her wallet, then handed the cashier a credit card she hadn't used in months. It went through. She smiled faintly. Sorry about that. Old card glitch. No problem at all, the cashier said. Lorraine carried her bags out to the car, the sky starting to dim as the clouds thickened above the lot. She loaded the trunk, climbed in, and sat with her hands on the wheel for a long moment. She wasn't shaken. She was done being shaken. The call came just after 6 p.m., while Lorraine was sautéing onions. Her phone buzzed face down on the counter, the old contact photo still attached to the number she hadn't yet blocked. Trevor, of course. She didn't answer on the first ring, or the second. By the third, her hands were dry enough to swipe. Hello? There was a pause on his end, like he'd been bracing for a version of her that no longer lived here. Card got declined, he said flatly. At the hardware store. I was trying to pick up caulk and screws. Did you forget to pay something? Lorraine stared at the stove. The onions were starting to brown. The garlic would go in next. She didn't rush her answer. I didn't forget anything, she said. I remembered something. My worth. Trevor gave a quiet snort, like she'd told him a fortune cookie line. Okay, Cynthia probably missed a bill. She's been handling most of that stuff lately. Honestly, I just thought it'd auto-pay like always. Cynthia, the girlfriend, the assistant, the excuse. Lorraine stirred the pan, let the silence breathe between them. Let me guess, she said. You didn't know the account was still in my name. That's not what I said. You didn't have to. He shifted tones, something lighter, falsely casual. Lorraine, I really think you're misunderstanding. I haven't used that card in months, maybe a small charge here and there. No, she interrupted. Not maybe, not small, not unintentional. She turned off the burner. The kitchen was full of onion and oil and truth. You used my accounts like they were extensions of your needs, quietly, consistently, without asking. I thought we agreed. We didn't, she said. You asked, once. I said fine, for gas in a pinch. That was 6 years ago. A pinch doesn't last that long, Trevor. That's called a habit. There was a long pause on the other end. The kind that used to rattle her, back when she tried to fill silence with apology. Not this time. You're blowing this out of proportion, he said finally. I didn't steal from you. No, Lorraine said calmly. You siphoned, slowly, deliberately, like I wouldn't notice because you assumed I still needed to be needed. Her voice didn't rise, it landed. He didn't like that. She could hear the shift, that quiet inhale he used to take before pulling back, emotionally or otherwise. You sound off, he said. I sound clear. Well, Trevor muttered. Cynthia said you've been different lately. Guess she wasn't wrong. Lorraine laughed once softly. She's right, I'm different. I'm corrected. He didn't respond right away. Then came the scrape of movement, maybe him standing, maybe reaching for something. But there was no apology, no acknowledgement, just an abrupt, gotta go. Then the line went dead. She stared at the screen for a moment, then placed the phone down gently. She felt no sting, no throb, just clarity. He had called, not because he missed her or worried, not because he had anything meaningful to say. He had called because he couldn't pay for screws. Norma called half an hour later. I heard, she said, not bothering with small talk. He hung up. I figured. Any guilt? No. From him, I meant. Lorraine smiled. Still no. Norma lit a cigarette on the other end. Lorraine could hear the crackle. Imagine, Norma said, exhaling, having the nerve to act shocked when the free ride ends. It was never free, Lorraine said. I paid for it. I just finally canceled the subscription. Norma chuckled. There she is again. I think she's back for good this time. Good, Norma said. I missed her. They didn't say much after that. They didn't need to. Some conversations were just markers, stones set in the ground to remind you where you buried the part of yourself that used to flinch. The PayPal notification came on a Wednesday morning, tucked between 2 promotional emails from stores she no longer shopped at. You have a new money request. Trevor Whitaker, $180 note. Need to replace a power washer hose. You still have the account, right? Lorraine stared at it for a long time, coffee cooling beside her keyboard. He hadn't texted. Not called. Just this. Clean, impersonal, like a bill. She hovered over the blue button that read, Send money. Then she moved her cursor to decline. A confirmation window appeared. Reason for denial? She typed in the comment field, not this time. Click. Done. Her screen returned to neutral gray, but the satisfaction came in slow waves. It wasn't vengeance. It was correction, simple, measured, necessary. A few seconds later, her phone buzzed. Trevor Whitaker. Just the emoji. No words. Passive-aggressive punctuation from a man allergic to accountability. Lorraine set the phone face down on the table and felt a quiet smile form. Not gloating, not smug, just steady. The old Lorraine would have sent the money to avoid the noise. This one preferred silence. By afternoon, she was sitting across from John Farley in his corner office, the blinds half closed against the glare. The smell of old paper and faint aftershave filled the air. He leaned back in his chair, reading her latest request twice before speaking. You're sure you want to move part of your savings into a CD? Yes, something that can't be touched, even by you? Especially by me. John gave a faint, approving nod. Dual key access then. I'll set it up so withdrawals require my authorization. Keeps it clean and secure. You'll be the only signer. Lorraine looked out the window at downtown Raleigh, traffic humming, pedestrians darting between parked cars, a life going on around her. I used to think security meant someone else watching over things, she said. Now I think it just means not needing to ask. John smiled slightly. That's the most expensive lesson most of my clients ever learn. She slid the signed forms across the desk. Her penmanship looked different lately, firmer, more certain, like she'd stopped apologizing halfway through every letter. On the way home, she stopped by the bank branch. She withdrew $400 in 20s and 10s, crisp bills that smelled faintly of ink and starch. That night, she sat at the dining table with a small stack of envelopes and her label maker. She printed names for each: groceries, gas, rainy day, freedom. Each week she decided she'd pull a small amount, cash she could see, touch, control. The envelopes fit perfectly inside the old recipe tin her mother had once used for pie crust notes. She wiped the tin clean, slid it onto the middle shelf of her pantry, and shut the door. No alarms, no apps, no notifications. Just paper, patience, and proof that she was finally running her own show. Later that evening, Norma called while Lorraine was folding laundry. "You sound good," Norma said. "Did you do the thing?" "I did all the things." "Oh, I can hear it," Norma said with a laugh. "That tone, that quiet power and clean paper tone. What did you end up doing with the money?" "Moved most of it where no one can touch it," Lorraine said. "And I started taking a little out in cash every week. Labeled envelopes," Norma whistled. "Now that's power. Nothing says control like a woman with clean envelopes and zero apologies." Lorraine smiled. "It's strange how light it feels. Freedom always travels light, sweetheart." They lingered on the line for a while, comfortable in the silence that used to feel awkward, the kind of silence that meant something had been settled without needing to be said. Before hanging up, Norma added, "Next time he asks, don't answer. Let him marinate in his own surprise." "Oh, I won't answer," Lorraine said. "There's nothing left to fund." When she hung up, the house was quiet except for the low hum of the refrigerator. She looked toward the pantry where the envelopes sat, neatly stacked, waiting. Everything in that tiny box was hers, earned, named, protected. And for the first time in years, she realized she didn't owe anyone a single explanation. Lorraine didn't recognize the number when it rang. Not local, not saved. She answered anyway. Her instincts didn't jump, just braced. "Hi, Lorraine." A woman's voice, overly warm. "It's Cynthia, Trevor's wife." Lorraine leaned back in her chair, her laptop still open to a spreadsheet where she'd been tracking her envelope balances. "I know who you are," she said neutrally. "Oh, good," Cynthia laughed, the sound too chirpy, too prepared. "I just wanted to touch base. We've noticed a few hiccups, little things really. Some old account numbers aren't processing like they used to. I figured it might have been a banking error." Lorraine didn't flinch. "You'll have to ask your husband about that." A pause. Just long enough for the temperature to shift. "Oh," Cynthia said, this time flatter. "Right." Lorraine could hear her recalibrating, tightening her tone, smoothing her face even though Lorraine couldn't see it. "Well, Trevor's been trying to sort through some things on his end, but it's hard to keep track when so much of it is still technically entangled. That's why I was thinking, maybe we should revisit the estate plan." Lorraine laughed once, softly. It wasn't mean. It wasn't even angry. It was the sound of someone unbothered. "It's been revisited," she said, "thoroughly." Cynthia didn't respond right away. The game was up. And she didn't have a next move. Lorraine added, "And you should know, whatever fantasy Trevor sold you about future inheritances or shared retirement, that ship never existed. It was patched together debt with a steering wheel." There was a brittle inhale on the other end. Cynthia hadn't expected that tone. "Look," she said, voice clipped now. "We're just trying to avoid confusion. Everyone benefits when we're transparent." "Transparency doesn't require access," Lorraine replied. "And confusion only exists when people go poking around where they don't belong." Cynthia tried one last pivot. "This doesn't have to be adversarial." Lorraine smiled. "It's not. It's just final." She ended the call. That afternoon, she ordered a fireproof safe. Not the kind you hide under a floorboard or in a closet. Just a solid steel unit with biometric locking and 2 shelves. It would go in the pantry, behind the baking shelf, next to the envelopes. Inside it, she'd store the title to her car, her birth certificate, John's updated documents, and the hard drive with her old tax records. Nothing extravagant, just hers, ownership contained. The next morning, she met John for coffee at a quiet cafe on Glenwood, near the edge of downtown where the buildings grew older and the sidewalks were still cracked. She slid a manila folder across the table. "I want to open a Roth, clean account, no ties." John flipped through the forms, eyebrows slightly raised. "You sure?" "Yes." "Retirement?" "No," she said. "Survival with interest." John didn't press. He respected timing, and he respected a woman who didn't hedge. "Dual signature required on withdrawals." She shook her head. "No, just me." He nodded. "You're building your own firewall." "I already have. This is the quiet moat." He sipped his coffee and tapped the forms into a neat pile. "I'll process this today. You'll have full digital access by tomorrow." Lorraine looked out the window. Across the street, a woman was teaching her daughter how to parallel park in a hand-me-down Civic. The car jerked, straightened, then finally eased into place. Control came in pieces. She knew that now. "You know," she said, still watching the car, "for years I thought being smart with money meant knowing how to stretch it. Turns out it just means knowing when to say no." John smiled. "Most expensive word in the world." Later that evening, Lorraine opened her email and saw a new PayPal request. From Trevor. 4217. Note. "Forgot my wallet. Gas station wouldn't take Apple Pay." She didn't respond. Didn't decline. Just left it sitting there, unread, unfunded, unimportant. She walked to the pantry, opened the tin, and checked her envelopes. Rainy day was up to $260. She smiled, folded the bills, closed the lid. The only person getting paid now was her. Lorraine wasn't looking for anything when she pulled up her old credit report. She just wanted to check that the final threads had been cut. But there it was. Whitaker's Floral, $98.67. Charged 3 days ago to a card that should have been closed. The same card she'd terminated with John's help. Her name, still attached. She blinked once, then exhaled, slow and deliberate. Flowers, of course. She pictured it too easily. Trevor swiping that card like he still had the right, sending peonies or overpriced lilies to Cynthia after some petty marital spat, pretending generosity wasn't rooted in someone else's soil. She clicked into the charge and found the receipt. Delivery address confirmed it. Cynthia's name, their house in Durham. Lorraine didn't feel rage. What she felt was insulted. There were limits to what she could ignore, and this wasn't about $98. It was about audacity. It was about a man so used to convenience, he didn't know how to let go of the ladder even after the wall was gone. She called John before noon. "I ran the credit pull like you suggested," she said. Trevor used the closed card for flowers, $98. John was silent for a beat. Then, "You sure the account was fully shut down?" "Yes, we closed it. But there's a backup profile, one of those online gateways. His name's not on it. Mine still is." John's tone cooled. "Then we wipe every trace. This ends now." Lorraine nodded. "I want a full scrub. Email logins, secondary authorizations, all of it. I'll run it through our security partner. You'll get a report in 48 hours. Meanwhile, I suggest you file a formal fraud report." "I already started it." John paused. "You're moving fast." "I've had years to think." He didn't argue. Back at home, she opened her phone settings and built out a new set of financial alerts. Every charge, every deposit, every login attempt, real-time notifications for anything that bore her name. She even created a backup alert routed to Norma's phone, just in case. A double-barrel safeguard. Then she filed the report. She listed the charge as unauthorized, explained that the card had been terminated, included the screenshot from the gateway account that still bore her credentials. Under relationship to cardholder, she wrote one word, X. Under suspected motive, she typed entitlement. An hour later, she stepped outside into the backyard, the safe now tucked away behind pantry doors and the envelope tins still untouched from last night. The garden had started blooming again, shyly, early. Unopened tulips stood like question marks in a soft breeze. She knelt in the mulch, fingers brushing dirt from the edge of a paver she'd reset last fall. Bees moved from lavender to clover, slow and single-minded. There was something quiet about it all, something unapologetic. The sun warmed her face as she sat back on her heels. She thought of how much those flowers had cost, not the bouquet, but the principle. The assumption that she'd always be the one covering what he couldn't carry. Not anymore. She wasn't the afterthought or the fallback. She was the ledger, closed. She reached toward the unopened tulips, but didn't touch them. They were better left alone, still sealed, still full of what they hadn't yet decided to reveal. The next message came 2 days later. Just a text. No greeting, no apology. Trevor. Guess you filed fraud. Real mature. No emoji this time, no charm wrapped in sarcasm. Just the raw tone of someone who had expected the world to keep handing him a spare key. Lorraine didn't reply. She read it once, deleted it, then cleared the entire conversation history. If Trevor wanted to talk to someone, he could try talking to himself. That afternoon, Lorraine walked into the garage and opened the old cedar cabinet near the workbench. It had been untouched for years, since before the divorce, even before Trevor's slow fade from husband to houseguest. She lifted the toolbox from the bottom shelf, blew dust off the top, and opened the lid. The scent hit her instantly. Cedar, metal, linseed oil. Familiar, specific. Her wood carving set was still intact. The chisels and gouges were tarnished, but they were all there. She pulled on a pair of soft gloves and ran her hand over a block of unfinished pine, still wrapped in brown paper from the art supply store in Apex. She had bought it on impulse back when she thought having a hobby meant she was being selfish. Now it felt like self-rescue. By the end of the week, she'd joined a local co-op of senior artisans who worked out of a converted feed store on the edge of town. They met Tuesdays and Thursdays. No dues, no nonsense. Just coffee, chatter, and quiet hands making beautiful things. Her first piece was rough, just a flat plaque with a beveled edge. But she shaped the letters with deliberate patience, carving each groove like it meant something. By Friday afternoon, it was done. A sign, 5 letters tall, finished in walnut stain. Closed for withdrawal. Norma came over that evening with a bottle of red and 2 sleeves of crackers. Lorraine showed her the sign and said nothing. Norma stared for a beat, then started laughing, deep from the stomach. That's either the best boundary I've ever seen or the pettiest. Maybe both, Lorraine said. They hung it in the sunroom, just above the windowsill where the ivy tended to overgrow in summer. Lorraine stepped back, hands on her hips. It looked good there, like it belonged, like it had been waiting for the right version of her to finish it. That night, Lorraine made herself roast chicken with lemon and garlic, peeled carrots and crisp potatoes. Nothing frozen, nothing instant. She used real silverware, the wedding set she kept after the split. Not out of sentiment, but because she liked how it felt in her hands. Substantial, balanced. She poured herself 1 glass of wine, ate slowly, no TV, no background noise. Just the soft creak of the house settling and the rhythm of her own breath. The dining table had never felt so honest. It wasn't lonely, it was uninterrupted. After dinner, she washed each dish by hand, not because she had to, but because she could. The water was hot, the sponge firm, the act familiar. It reminded her of her mother's house, the way they used to clean in comfortable silence after holidays. When the last glass was dried, she walked into the sunroom and sat beneath the sign. Outside, dusk was settling in, the deep Carolina kind, where blue and gold hold hands before letting go. She didn't think of Trevor. Not directly. She thought of what it had taken to become someone else, not the survivor, not the ex, not the angry woman with a spreadsheet full of receipts. A stranger, finally, to the version of herself who had waited too long to say no. And she liked that stranger. She'd built her with both hands. The call came just after 10 a.m., crisp and professional. Mrs. Whitaker, this is Dana with Midland Lending. Just confirming some final details before we release the funds. Lorraine blinked. She was standing in the laundry room folding dish towels. The sky outside was gray, waiting for rain. I think you have the wrong person, she said evenly. There was a pause. Keys tapping. Loan application submitted last week, the woman said. Co-signers listed as Trevor and Lorraine Whitaker. You're listed under the second applicant. Address on Sycamore Lane. We just need to verify. You can stop right there, Lorraine said. I am not part of this loan. Cancel my name. Immediately. Another pause. Longer this time. Oh, I see. I'll flag the application for internal review. No, Lorraine said. You'll remove my name from it. And you'll receive a legal notice about it by end of day. She hung up, not angry, just cold. Trevor had overstepped before, but this was criminal. By noon, John had the cease and desist drawn up and emailed to both Midland Lending and Trevor. This wasn't just a sloppy oversight, he told her. He's getting bolder. Lorraine sat at her kitchen table, scrolling through emails with one hand and tracing the rim of her coffee mug with the other. Good, she said. Let him be bold. It makes the paper trail easier. John's voice was steady. We'll get his signature flagged across all bureaus. Nothing he touches will go unnoticed again. But if he forged yours? I'll press charges, Lorraine said. No hesitation. I won't bluff. You won't need to. That night, just before dinner, a long-winded email arrived from Cynthia. The subject line was vague, let's clear this up. But the body was pure theatrics. Paragraphs of flowery damage control. We've been trying to rebuild trust. This is hurting our reputation. Surely you don't want to escalate things. Lorraine didn't reply. She didn't even read the full message. She printed it. 3 clean pages, single-spaced, with just enough spin to qualify as delusion. Then she slid it into her safe under a new folder she labeled with one word, entitlement. No response was the response. Just after sunset, Norma arrived unannounced, holding a store-bought pie and 2 paper plates. I was going to make one, she said, but this week sucked, and I'm too old to pretend store-bought doesn't do the job. They sat on the porch, forks in hand, the air damp but pleasant. Peach? Lorraine asked after the first bite. Apple, Norma said. But I like that you thought I'd try something optimistic. They ate in silence for a while, watching dusk slip into evening. A neighbor's dog barked in the distance, but otherwise the street was quiet. Lorraine stretched her legs and leaned back in her chair. He tried to take a loan with my name on it. Norma didn't look surprised. Of course he did. And Cynthia wrote me a full-blown PR statement like I'm an investor instead of the person they keep trying to steal oxygen from. Norma licked her fork. People like them always overestimate 2 things: your patience and their cleverness. Lorraine smiled. I'm fresh out of both. Good, Norma said. That means you're finally on schedule. They finished their pie slowly, like the silence was seasoning. Later, after Norma left, Lorraine washed the 2 forks and left the plates out to dry. She walked back into the sunroom and stood beneath the walnut-stained sign. Closed for withdrawal. She didn't feel smug. She didn't feel vindicated. She felt aligned. What was hers again, not by force, by refusal. Lorraine wasn't looking for drama when she opened Facebook. She rarely checked it anymore. Too many curated lives. Too many people trying to out-happy each other. But the post showed up anyway. Trevor Whitaker shared a memory. She clicked, not out of interest, but curiosity, a gut check. It was a photo from 5 years ago. Him at a backyard cookout, plastic cup in hand, sun glaring off his forehead. Lorraine was barely visible in the corner, setting a tray of watermelon wedges on the patio table. His caption read, "Some people forget the good times when they're too busy rewriting the ending. Sad how some folks burn bridges they helped build." 68 likes. A swirl of vague comments. Some folks never appreciate loyalty. You're better off, bro. Keep your head up, King. Lorraine scrolled through them all. Not one mention of her name, but all of it written like a dog whistle in a pitch they thought she couldn't hear. She didn't feel exposed or angry. She just felt done. She closed the tab, didn't reply, didn't post a rebuttal, didn't screen capture it for Norma. She just opened her budgeting app. Lorraine scrolled down to the category she'd once labeled just in case. She renamed it self-care. Then she doubled the monthly allotment. No more guilt over spending money on herself. No more measuring indulgence like a crime scene. She adjusted the numbers, hit save, and immediately searched for rentals near the lake. 2 clicks later, she booked a 2-day stay at a quiet cabin overlooking Jordan Lake. Nothing fancy, just big windows, a screened porch, and the kind of silence she didn't have to earn. No one else invited, no agenda, just her carving kit, and whatever weather showed up. That afternoon, she met John for coffee at the same spot on Glenwood where they'd started the Roth paperwork. He slid a thin folder across the table. Final asset protections, filed, certified, and backed. Untouchable, non-contestable. Not even in theory. Lorraine flipped it open. Everything was there, updated titles, new beneficiaries, layered locks no one could break unless she handed them the code. John sipped his espresso. No one can touch a cent of it, Lorraine, not even your estate executor without clearance. We even added a poison pill clause for good measure. She smiled. You think of everything. I think of people like him, John said. And women like you, who spent too many years letting decency get confused with permission. She closed the folder. I don't confuse them anymore. That night, she called Norma. Found his little pity post, Lorraine said casually. He went full martyr mode, Norma groaned. What was it this time? Sad when people forget loyalty? Or the classic, some folks like to play victim? Both, Lorraine said. Mixed with a soft focus filter and some pity likes from people who couldn't pick me out of a police lineup. God, that man is the human version of a speed bump with a podcast. Lorraine laughed. Not because it was that funny, but because she could. I didn't engage, she added. Didn't even screenshot it. Norma exhaled with a grin in her voice. Let him vent. Let you live. Later, Lorraine sat at her kitchen table with a cup of mint tea and her travel confirmation pulled up on her phone. The check-in instructions were simple. Key under the mat. Hammock in the back. She was already picturing it. Quiet water, whittling tools, time with no clock. Outside, a light rain had started. The tulips in the garden nodded gently in the breeze, half-bloomed and indifferent to drama. She didn't need to win. She just needed to keep what was hers, peace, privacy, and the power to say nothing. And she had all three. The voicemail had come in while she was out walking, her phone tucked into the side pocket of her windbreaker like an afterthought. She didn't notice it till she got home and plugged it in beside the toaster. One missed call, one new voicemail. Trevor. She made tea first. Not out of hesitation, but principle. Some messages didn't deserve urgency. She stirred in a splash of honey, sat down at the table, and hit play. Hey, Lorraine. His voice, too casual. Didn't want to text. Thought maybe hearing me would, I don't know, mean something. He sighed dramatically, theatrical as ever. I just think it's a little extreme. All this silence, all this distance. You know me, I screw things up, but I always come around. You're just reacting hard, like you want a show, like you need a villain. He chuckled softly, low and calculated. I never tried to hurt you, we both know that. You've always been better at words. I'm better at letting things go. Click, end of message. Lorraine stared at the screen for another beat. Not because it surprised her, but because it didn't. No apology, no ownership. Just reshaped guilt designed to fit her shoulders again. She hit delete, then opened her contacts, scrolled down, and removed his name. No backup. No archived number, just gone. It felt clean, not triumphant, just correct. Like finally closing a door she didn't owe him anymore. That night, she logged into her online medical profile and updated her emergency contact from Trevor to Norma Callahan. The system asked her to confirm with a 6-digit code. She typed it in slowly, deliberately. The way you write down a decision you plan to live with. The update screen blinked once, then saved. There, done. She poured herself a second glass of water and sat down in front of her laptop. A sticky note beside the monitor read, Legacy folder, this weekend. She opened a fresh folder on her desktop and titled it, In Case I Don't Answer. Inside, she saved the contact sheet for her lawyer, John's asset file, the will, her Roth account summary, and a short Word doc with the password vault instructions. No poetry, no confessions, just directions. She didn't want her story told through voicemail transcripts or PayPal requests. She wanted it to be hers, end to end. After finishing the folder, she opened a new browser tab and logged into her bank. She started a new savings account. Account name, End of Peace Fund. She transferred in $1,000, then set up an automatic weekly deposit from her checking. Not out of fear, out of preparation, just in case peace wasn't the finish line, but the intermission. The meatloaf was already in the oven when she finished. She mixed the cornbread batter slowly, listening to the familiar scrape of her mother's wooden spoon against the old mixing bowl. Dinner wasn't fancy, just warm. Just hers. She plated it carefully, not to impress anyone, but because it mattered now that she felt like someone worth feeding. Cornbread square, meatloaf slice, a scoop of green beans from the garden. No candlelight, no soundtrack. Just dignity and starch and the quiet act of not needing to explain her choices to anyone anymore. Norma texted around 8:45. Norma. Got your voicemail. You made me your emergency contact. You trying to make me cry or give me power of attorney, Lorraine? Yes. A moment later, Norma heard that. By 10, the dishes were done and her robe was wrapped tight around her shoulders. She walked through the darkened house, checking locks, not out of fear, but habit. She paused at the sunroom doorway, the soft glow of the porch light washing across the wood-carved sign. Closed for withdrawal. She hadn't needed to update it. It still said everything, but she could feel the shift. This wasn't just about boundaries anymore. It was about building a life that didn't require recovery from anyone else's choices. It was about outgrowing her own past, without needing to explain why. It started with a knock on the door. Uniformed, calm, unapologetic. Ma'am, we've been sent for a welfare check. Petition from a family member concerned about your mental competency. Lorraine blinked once, the way someone does when they hear thunder on a clear day. She stepped aside, let the officers glance around the house, and offered them tea. She didn't flinch, didn't protest. It wasn't a surprise. She had been expecting something, just not this brand of desperation. Trevor hadn't gotten to her through the bank, or through guilt, or through Cynthia's flowery emails. So now it was through the courts. He hadn't filed himself, of course. It had come through a distant cousin, someone he must have fed a script to. A performance dressed up as concern. The petition claimed Lorraine was exhibiting signs of social withdrawal, paranoia, and erratic behavior concerning financial matters. No one had called her. No one had asked her a damn thing. The state just scheduled the evaluation. The assessor came on a Thursday afternoon. Mid-50s, black blazer, calm demeanor, sharp eyes. Call me Eileen, she said, setting her clipboard gently on the kitchen table. This won't take long. Lorraine offered tea. Then chess. They sat across from each other by the sunroom window. The game unfolded slowly, each move measured, like a conversation without words. Knight to C3, Lorraine said, smiling faintly. I've always liked long games. Eileen raised an eyebrow. Notice that. You haven't rushed a single move. I stopped rushing things the day I realized urgency was usually someone else's need, not mine. They played for an hour. No clipboard, no probing questions. Just tea, board, strategy. Afterward, Eileen closed her notebook with a satisfied click. You understand why I'm here? Lorraine nodded. They ran out of ways to take things from me. And now they're trying to make people believe you've taken something from yourself? Something like that. Eileen stood. My report will reflect what I saw. Which is? You're not just competent, Lorraine. She smiled. You're exceptionally so. The dismissal came 2 days later. Filed, closed, archived. Case dismissed for lack of merit. No further action required. John called the moment the documents were uploaded. His voice carried something between relief and validation. It's over, he said. They've got nothing left to grab. Lorraine was on her porch, polishing the armrest of an old wicker chair she'd been meaning to replace. Then I suppose it's time I got something new, she said. The next morning, she drove to the antique store on the south side of Apex, the one with mismatched chandeliers and creaky wooden floors. She found the chair by accident, tucked between a bookshelf full of war novels and a box of rusted license plates. It wasn't flashy, just sturdy. Maple, with deep arms and a high back. A chair meant for someone who had things to reflect on, not prove. She had them loaded into her trunk. That afternoon, she moved her old reading chair out of the sunroom and slid the new one into its place. It fit like it had been waiting for her. She adjusted the angle slightly, not toward the yard, not toward the feeder, but just enough to catch the evening light. Norma arrived with a mason jar of sweet tea and the day's mail. You replaced the chair, she said. I replaced a lot more than that. Norma sat on the edge of the ottoman, raised an eyebrow. So it's true. Trevor tried to have you evaluated? Lorraine handed her the dismissal letter. Norma scanned it, scoffed, and muttered, "Well, I'll be damned." "He had to try one more thing," Lorraine said. "And he failed with style." Norma looked up, voice low and even. "Are you okay?" Lorraine looked out the window. The tulips had bloomed, fully, unapologetically. "I'm not just okay," she said. "I'm unshakable." That night, she poured herself a glass of wine, not to celebrate, but to mark it. The difference between surviving someone and moving beyond them. She sat in her new chair, feet tucked under her, the dismissal letter folded neatly in her lap. No frame, no spotlight, just acknowledgement. The last grasp had come and gone, and she was still here, undefended, unmoved, free. The envelope came on a Wednesday, tucked in with the week's grocery flyers and a coupon for tile cleaner. No return address, but the handwriting was unmistakable, neat, practiced, masculine. Trevor's attempt at legibility, a kind of performance in ink. Lorraine stood at the kitchen counter, still wearing gardening gloves, damp soil under her nails. She opened it with a paring knife. Not because she needed to, but because she didn't care enough to fetch the letter opener. The note inside was 2 pages, handwritten. No greeting, no apology. Just a vague apology-shaped paragraph at the top, followed by 3 rambling reflections on what we were and how everything got so misinterpreted. It ended with a line that made her laugh out loud. "I still think there's value in communication, even when the other person forgets how to be generous with grace." She read it once, set it aside, then walked it straight out to the recycling bin. No drama, no fire, no box of mementos. Just paper, going where paper belongs when it's done lying. The afternoon was warm, the kind that hummed with slow bees and low wind. Lorraine wore her straw hat and old sneakers, kneeling beside the garden bed with a tray of seedlings, basil, tomatoes, a few peppers, mostly for color. She pushed her trowel into the soil, one row at a time, spacing things with a ruler she'd once used for quilt squares. It wasn't about order, it was about intention. Every plant went in deep, surrounded by compost and the quiet kind of hope that didn't ask for a return. Norma showed up 2 hours later with a folded newspaper, a bag of sunflower seeds, and a story in her voice. Front page ran a feature on forgotten poets. "Thought it was finally your time to shine," she said, plopping onto the porch steps. Lorraine pulled off her gloves, dusted off her jeans, and nodded toward the sunroom. "I've got carving to finish. You can read to me if you want." Inside, the wood shavings collected like feathers around Lorraine's feet. She was shaping spoons now, soft pine, smoothed at the edges. Not for selling, not for anyone. Just to do it. Norma sat in the corner, one leg crossed over the other, glasses perched low on her nose. She read slowly, pausing sometimes to sip iced tea. One article was about a town voting to turn their old jail into a farmer's market. Another was a letter to the editor about leash laws. Norma made voices for the indignant ones, and Lorraine didn't look up, but her smirk gave her away. They didn't speak much. They didn't need to. The quiet between them wasn't absence. It was earned. At one point, Norma paused. "You want to talk about the letter?" "No," Lorraine said gently, "but thanks." "Fair." Norma went back to reading. Lorraine went back to carving. And somewhere between a sentence about stray dogs and the curve of a spoon's handle, they both laughed. Loud, unexpected, belly deep. No reason, no punchline. Just relief finding its shape. That night, after Norma left, Lorraine logged into her accounts. It wasn't paranoia. It was ritual, her kind of prayer. Banking, investment, insurance, credit. Everything was where it should be, untouched, secure, solvent. She clicked through each tab slowly, then signed out. She didn't feel proud. She didn't feel powerful. She just felt exact, like her life finally fit. Before bed, she stepped out to the garden. The tomato seedlings were already settling, their leaves unfurling in the moonlight like they'd been waiting for night. She crouched down, touched the soil, still warm, still hers. The message came on a Tuesday. Not from Trevor, not from Cynthia, from him. Caleb, short, tentative, delivered through a platform Lorraine barely used anymore. Saw your carving post on Norma's feed. I miss you. No agenda, just that. She sat with it for a long time, not with dread, not even with hesitation. Just the kind of pause you take before stepping into cold water, knowing it's worth it if you breathe through the shock. Then she typed, I miss you too, let's talk. No strings. They met at Lou's Diner off I-40, halfway between his campus and her house. Neutral ground. No expectations. The waitress recognized Lorraine, called her on, and poured her coffee before she asked. The booth squeaked when Caleb slid in across from her. He looked older than the last time, not by years, but by inches of worry he hadn't had before. There was a kindness in his face that hadn't aged out. Still there, still honest. Hi, Mom, he said, eyes barely meeting hers. Hi, kiddo. They ordered simply, grilled cheese for him, turkey club for her. No fries. No extras. She waited. Let the silence breathe. He finally spoke. I didn't know what to say for a long time. Trevor made everything sound complicated, and I let that be easier than asking you directly. Lorraine didn't flinch. I figured. Caleb swallowed. But I'm not here to fix anything. I know, she said. Neither am I. He looked relieved. They ate slowly, sipped coffee, talked about small things first, classes he was taking, a new hiking trail she'd found near Jordan Lake, how Norma had started growing sunflowers on accident and now called herself a gardener. Then, in between bites, Caleb said, I didn't know what you were dealing with. Not really. Dad always made it sound like you were just angry for no reason, Lorraine nodded. He made sure people heard his side early, before they even knew there'd be another one. I should have called, Caleb said. She set her fork down gently. I wasn't waiting. His eyes welled slightly, but he didn't look away. No one ever taught me how to unpick a narrative. I just knew which version came with less noise. Lorraine smiled, slow and sad. That's how a lot of people learn silence. They sat with that a while. Then Caleb cleared his throat. Are we okay? Lorraine sipped her coffee, set it down, met his eyes. I'm still me, she said. Just not for free anymore. Caleb nodded. I get it, he said. I really do. They didn't hug in the parking lot. It wasn't a movie. They just stood there for a moment. Two people with shared DNA and a better understanding of boundaries than they'd had an hour ago. Then he got in his car. So did she. That night, Lorraine sat at her desk and opened a blank note on her phone. Contacts. She deleted the list completely. Then started over. Norma, John, Caleb. 3 names. That was enough. People who asked instead of assumed. People who didn't demand a performance. People who didn't confuse access with entitlement. She set the list as her home screen widget. Just a small row of names, white text on a deep green background. She closed her phone, got up, and walked to the pantry. Inside the tin, the envelopes were still in place. The Rainy Day Fund, the Freedom Fund, the End of Peace Fund. She added a new one, blank for now. She hadn't named it yet, but she had a feeling it was going to fill fast. Lorraine woke just before 7. No alarm, no noise from the street. The morning was still, soft Carolina light folding through the curtains. Birdsong bleeding in from the backyard like a slow exhale. She sat up without urgency. The silence wasn't hollow, it was earned. She padded into the kitchen, turned on the kettle, and measured out grounds for 1 strong mug. The cabinets clicked softly. The floor didn't creak. The phone on the counter didn't buzz. No texts, no notifications. She stirred her coffee and leaned against the counter, sipping slowly. There was nothing waiting to be fixed. Nothing waiting to be erased. Just a day. The safe was already unlocked. She'd meant to tidy it earlier in the week, but hadn't needed to. Everything inside was where it belonged. Deeds, titles, the Roth, the contact list, the printed emails labeled entitlement. Even the spoons she'd carved for no one sat in a linen pouch, tucked beside her will. It didn't feel like storage. It felt like structure. She slid the door closed with a soft clunk, turned the lock, and stepped away. Done. She made pancakes. Real ones. No box mix, no microwave shortcuts. She added cinnamon and blueberries and plated them without rush. 1 pat of butter, real maple syrup, a folded napkin, a glass of orange juice. She ate at the table, alone, the chair across from her deliberately unfilled. She didn't need company to feel complete. For the first time in years, she didn't eat to fill space. She ate to feed herself. At 10:03, Norma knocked, let herself in with her copy of the key, and dropped a canvas tote on the table. 2 crosswords, 1 Sudoku, and sparkling cider, the holy trinity of a woman not giving a damn. Lorraine laughed, poured 2 glasses, and handed one over. They sat at the table, heads bent in companionable concentration. Norma circled a clue and muttered, "Who the hell remembers rivers in Slovakia?" "You, apparently," Lorraine said, without looking up. Norma smirked. "Balance still good?" Lorraine nodded. "Better than good." She tapped the edge of her glass. "My balance is perfect." Later that afternoon, she opened her laptop one last time. There was just one file left to upload. An encrypted document containing all revocation notices, pins, and signouts. She dragged it into her secure cloud and titled it simply, Final Ledger. Then she signed out of the shared password manager she used to maintain with Caleb. He had access to her heart now, but not her accounts. She stood by the kitchen window, her coffee warm in her hands again. Outside, the wind lifted the edges of the basil she'd planted. The tomatoes had begun to bloom, shy yellow blossoms poking through. She didn't need anyone to witness this piece. She just needed to know she'd made it hers. The doorbell didn't ring. No one called. She watched the day unfold in layers. Sunlight on the wood floors, the quiet shuffle of her neighbor's dog, a single cardinal on the fence post. Nothing loud, nothing sharp, just enough. That night, she made a small dinner, leftover greens, grilled chicken, half a sweet potato, and sat down to eat as the sky burned into its evening blue. No glass of wine, no candle, no reason to dress it up. This was the life she chose when she stopped answering to people who thought access was a right. When the day finally settled and the house folded into quiet again, she picked up her phone and opened her text history. The thread was still there, archived, not deleted. Trevor. She scrolled back, not far, just far enough to find it. Mother's Day, 5:17 p.m. "You know we're busy, right?" She stared at it for a long moment. Then, without sentiment, she hit delete. No record, no reason, just gone. And finally, she opened her secure ledger, added one more line, and typed, "On Mother's Day, my son texted, 'You know we're busy, right?' I was busy too, cutting him access to my accounts." She saved it. Then she shut the laptop,